Sarah woke with a gasp, her heart racing as sunlight poured through her Chicago bedroom window. It was 11:50 a.m., and she'd never slept so late in her life. The night before, James, her former husband who'd left her 27 years ago, had knelt in her home, thanking her for rebuilding his life. "Mother of Kings, thank you for changing me," he'd said, voice trembling. Sarah had touched his shoulder, peace in her eyes, whispering, "I didn't do anything. God did." But as she lay in bed that night, memories had flooded back, not the pain, but the love they'd once shared. Now she sat up, her mind reeling from a dream so vivid it felt like a message. What had she seen? Why did it feel so real? The questions gripped her, a wall of wonder holding her still, her heart urging her to dig deeper. In her dream, Sarah had journeyed through time with James, seeing their past like a movie. She saw them young, in love, his smile lighting up her world the day they met. She dreamed of his sacrifices, selling his prized bike to help her finish school, skipping meals so she could eat, working late to keep her dreams alive. She saw the moment he gave her his kidney 35 years ago, begging doctors to save her life as illness threatened to take her. He'd sold his father's land to pay her hospital bills, never telling her until months later. She dreamed of their wedding, their vows whispered under a starry sky, and their honeymoon, two hearts believing they'd face every storm together. The memories were raw, beautiful, and for the first time, she remembered not just the hurt, but the love that came before. Sarah's hands shook as she reached for her phone. 50 missed calls and messages from Kai, Leo, Ethan, Noah, Sam, and their wives. Her heart sank. She'd scared them. Just then, Kai called again, his voice trembling with relief when she answered. "Mama, what happened? You scared us. I was on my way to the airport to fly to you." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she explained, "I was sleeping, Kai. I had a dream, so real, so deep. I only just woke up." Kai sighed, his worry easing, but the calls kept coming. Leo, already at the airport, was booking a flight to Chicago, his voice tight with fear. One by one, Sarah calmed her sons, their love wrapping around her like a warm blanket. But the dream wouldn't let go. Sarah sat quietly, the city's hum a distant echo outside her window. The memories felt too vivid to be just a dream. James's sacrifices, their love, the promises they'd made. "There's something deeper here," she whispered to herself, her heart pounding. She needed answers. That afternoon, she drove to her pastor's house in a bustling Chicago neighborhood, the streets alive with vendors and kids playing. She poured out her story, the dream, the emotions, the strange, late awakening. The pastor listened, his eyes serious, then prayed over her, his voice deep and fervent. When he finished, he looked at Sarah with a weighty expression. "Mama Sarah," he said, "you need to call James and all 5 of your sons here. God has something to reveal, and it involves all of you." Sarah's breath caught. God's revelation? What could it be? The pastor's words sparked a fire in her, a mix of awe and anticipation. She nodded, her mind racing. What truth was waiting for them? The mystery deepened, pulling her forward, her heart tethered to the unknown. Back home, Sarah called her sons. Kai and Leo, already in the country, agreed to come right away. Ethan, Noah, and Sam, living abroad, begged to join via video call, unwilling to miss what God had in store. A date was set, the stage ready for something big. The next morning, Sarah called James, her voice steady as she told him about the pastor's request. As he turned to leave, she asked softly, "James, after we separated, why didn't you remarry?" The question hung between them, a thread of curiosity tying her to his past. James paused, a heavy sigh escaping him. "I did," he said quietly, his voice thick with memory. 5 years after I left you, I married a woman. She had 2 kids. I thought they were mine." His eyes dimmed, pain creeping in. 10 years later, one got sick, needed a blood transfusion. My blood didn't match. I did a DNA test. They weren't mine. Sarah's heart sank as he continued. I was going to confront her, but she struck me with a sickness. Poisoned me, I think. I nearly died in the hospital. She took everything. My money, my papers, even my certificates, and vanished with the kids. His voice cracked. I was left with nothing, Sarah. I struggled for years, every job failing, until God brought me back to you. Sarah listened, compassion filling her. It's okay, James, she said gently. I'm just glad you're alive. All thanks to God. The chapter ends with Sarah and James preparing for the pastor's meeting, Kai and Leo on their way, and Ethan, Noah, and Sam ready to join online. The city buzzes outside, but inside, anticipation builds. What will God reveal? The dream's weight lingers, and James's confession adds a layer of pain and gratitude, setting the stage for a life-changing truth. The pastor's home in Chicago buzzed with a sacred stillness as Sarah, James, Kai, and Leo sat together, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Ethan, Noah, and Sam joined via Zoom from abroad, their faces tense on the screen, the city's hum a faint backdrop outside. Just days ago, Sarah had woken from a vivid dream of her past with James, reliving their love, his sacrifices, and the pain of his abandonment 27 years ago. The pastor's words had called them here. God has something to reveal. What could it be? The question hung heavy, a wall of awe keeping everyone silent, their eyes locked on the pastor as the truth began to unfold. The pastor looked at Sarah and James with deep reverence. Mama Sarah, everything that happened between you and James wasn't by chance, he said, his voice steady. It was God's divine plan. Sarah's breath caught, her hands gripping the edge of her chair. The pastor continued, Your purpose on earth was never to have children of your own blood. Your calling was to raise these 5 boys, Kai, Leo, Ethan, Noah, and Sam, into the men they are today. Kai's eyes widened, Leo's jaw tightened, and the brothers on the screen leaned closer, their hearts racing. A purpose greater than they'd ever imagined. Was this why their lives had taken such a path? Then came the twist, a revelation that shook them to their core. The reason God separated you for 27 years, the pastor said, turning to Sarah and James, was because of something James said the night before he left. Sarah's mind raced back. 7 years into their marriage, childless and desperate, she'd suggested adopting a boy and a girl. James had snapped, his voice cold. God forbid, I'll never raise someone else's kids. I want my own flesh and blood. The memory hit her like a wave, and James dropped his head, shame washing over him. The pastor's voice grew firm. That statement, James, became a stumbling block to Sarah's purpose. God had to separate you, not to punish, but to protect her destiny. A heavy silence fell, broken only by the hum of the Zoom call. The pastor continued. If you'd stayed together, Sarah would have honored your words. She'd have never adopted those 5 boys, and they would have remained forgotten. Tears rolled down Sarah's face as the truth sank in. Her pain, the loneliness, the years of wondering why. It wasn't random. It was preparation for a greater calling. James's eyes filled with tears, his hands trembling. I didn't know, he whispered, his voice cracking. I didn't understand my purpose. The pastor nodded, his gaze compassionate. God respected your choice, James, and let you walk your path. But he was preparing Sarah, giving her the space, the strength to raise these boys into kings. He paused, his voice softening. Now, God has brought you back together because his will is fulfilled. Those 5 boys, once forgotten, are thriving because of you, Sarah. It's time for you and James to continue the journey you began so long ago. Sarah's heart pounded. A reunion of destiny? The idea felt both impossible and sacred, a promise shimmering through her tears. The room, both physical and virtual, filled with a holy hush. The pastor opened his Bible, reading Isaiah 55, 8-9. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, says the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than yours. Sarah and James sat in awe, No blame, no shame, only grace. James had spoken carelessly, his words blocking blessings for 27 years, but God had turned pain into purpose. The pastor's voice deepened with wisdom. "One wrong word can change destinies," he said, looking at James. "We must be careful what we say, especially about God's plans." Sarah's tears fell freely, not from pain, but from revelation. "That's why," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I could never stop using your name, James, as my surname. Even when you were gone, I couldn't let it go." She looked at her sons, their faces wet with tears. "And all my boys carry it too. God was writing his story through us, even when it didn't make sense." Kai reached for her hand, Leo's arm wrapped around her shoulders, and Ethan, Noah, and Sam nodded on the screen, their voices breaking as they whispered, "We love you, Mama." The pastor stepped forward, his prayer a powerful seal over the moment. With love and divine purpose, he reconciled the family torn apart for 27 years. Sarah and James stood, their hands clasped, not just as former spouses, but as partners reborn through grace. Kai, Leo, Ethan, Noah, and Sam, both in the room and on the screen, joined in a virtual embrace, their bond stronger than ever. The city outside hummed, unaware of the miracle unfolding within. The pastor's words still echoed in Sarah's heart as she stood in her Chicago home, the city's skyline glowing through the window. A divine plan had separated her and James for 27 years to fulfill her purpose of raising Kai, Leo, Ethan, Noah, and Sam. Now reconciled, Sarah and James faced a new dawn. Months after the meeting, they remarried in a small church ceremony, their sons and families gathered, laughter and tears mingling in the air. Was this truly a new beginning, or would the past resurface? The question lingered, a quiet tension beneath the joy, pulling the heart toward the next chapter of their journey. The ceremony was simple but sacred. Kai walked Sarah down the aisle, his twin daughters Rose and Mary scattering petals, their names a tribute to her. Leo, Ethan, Noah, and Sam stood tall, their wives and children cheering, the Zoom screen behind them alive with virtual guests from across the globe. James, his eyes wet, took Sarah's hand, his voice steady as he vowed to stay this time. The pastor blessed them, his prayer a seal of grace. "God has brought you back to finish what you started," he said, and the room erupted in applause, the city's hum a distant heartbeat to their reunion. But the story wasn't over. A twist unfolded weeks later. Sarah's work with Mama, Sarah's Free Kitchen, caught national attention. A government official, moved by her viral story of feeding hungry kids and forgiving James, nominated her for a role. On her 63rd birthday, Sarah was appointed Minister of Humanitarian and Women's Affairs. Her life's work now a platform to lift others on a grand scale. She stood at the podium in a Chicago auditorium, her sons and James beside her, the crowd roaring with pride. "This isn't for me," she said, her voice trembling, "but for every child who's ever gone hungry, for every heart that's ever needed mercy." Kai squeezed her hand, his eyes shining. His mother, once broken, was now a beacon for the nation. Sarah and James worked side by side, traveling across the country, their love reborn through service. They fed the hungry, supported orphans, comforted widows, their legacy growing with every life they touched. Mama Sarah's Free Kitchen expanded, new branches opening in other cities, funded by donations that poured in online. Kai, Leo, Ethan, Noah, and Sam led the charge, their families joining the mission, their children learning the power of giving. Social media buzzed with their story, hashtags like #Mercy Heals trending as people shared how Sarah's journey inspired them to forgive, to love, to serve. One evening, Sarah sat on her porch, the Chicago skyline twinkling, her grandchildren playing at her feet. James sat beside her, his hand in hers, a quiet smile on his face. "I never thought I'd be here," he whispered, his voice thick. "You gave me more than I deserved." Sarah looked at him, her eyes soft. "Mercy changes more than judgment ever could," she said, her words a testament to their journey. Kai overheard, stepping forward with a photo album. Pictures of their family, the restaurant, the kids they'd fed. "This is your legacy, Mama," he said, his voice breaking. "Not blood, but impact." The emotional punch landed as Sarah flipped through the album, tears falling. She'd once been abandoned, childless, broken, but from that pain came a legacy. 5 boys raised into kings, countless lives changed, a nation inspired. Her deepest wounds had become her highest calling. James's careless words had cost 27 years of joy, but God's plan was greater, turning pain into purpose. Sarah's life taught that true strength lies in forgiveness, not for others, but for yourself. She didn't just feed bodies, she fed souls, her mercy healing generations. The story ends with Sarah and James surrounded by their family, the city alive around them. Blessings overflowed, doors of favor opened, opportunities poured in, their happiness a harmony of grace. Sarah's journey reminds us, your pain isn't the end, it's the setup for your greatest purpose. Words hold power. Speak wisely, for they shape destinies. And true kindness, like Sarah's, never goes unnoticed. Heaven rewards it with a legacy that lasts forever.